Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of the Latest in Travel podcast by Guestcentric. For today's episode, I'm very excited to have with me Andrew Rubinacci, who is the Chief Advisory Officer at FLYR, which is an international team of industry and domain experts who are passionate about improving the travel and transportation industry. So welcome, Andrew. It's really great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
And I gave a brief introduction, but for those who might be watching and might not be familiar, would you mind giving like a quick background on what you've been up to, who you are, what it is that you do, and your journey through the industry and so on?
Sure. Yeah. So the journey through the industry and all that. Yeah, I've been I'm with FLYR for FLYR Hospitality right now, and have been for the last 6-7 months. So fairly new on the tech side, but really prior to that, my entire career has been on the hotel side. And I came up through hotels. I studied hotels through school. I was with a couple small management companies, and went to IHG. Was there for on and off because I had a couple stints with IHG, 25 years. And my last role there was Senior VP of Distribution and Revenue Management. So I headed up the distribution deals with the OTAs, some of the TMC deals, and sales and global sales, and the revenue management teams. So that was great. Then I moved over. I was Chief Commercial Officer over to Omni Hotels for a couple of years, and then went over to Aimbridge Hospitality for a couple of years, heading up all their commercial functions as well. And now over in FLYR. So I'm a hotel guy. I've spent first part of my career in operations. I was a guinea pig for revenue management. I literally was the first revenue manager at IHG back a long time ago. I won't say the dates. And I always liked doing new things. So revenue management, when the internet came about, I was with the management company. I was the director of e-commerce, so the first person in e-commerce before it was a thing. And then jumped into distribution when it was really, at the time, it was really just GDS. So how do you use the internet for the direct channels, but also I spent a lot of time on the indirect side. And working with some of the first deals with the OTAs. So back then it was Hotels.com and Travelocity and Expedia. Those were all three different companies, even though they're all the same company now. And did some of the first deals that for the brands back then. So kind of did that for a while, and then lived in Europe for a little bit. So I've worked in multiple continents, and now with FLYR, and I jumped over. I made the jump to the tech side because little thing. I didn't want to be the old guy who didn't understand what AI was. So when ChatGPT exploded, I started digging into it. Took some classes at MIT, and started talking to the FLYR guys. Was introduced. I just really loved what they were doing. It was AI from the ground up, revenue management solutions that. Let's face it, the industry's had them for 30 plus years, and they really haven't evolved all that much. They're using the same 2 years of history and 12-week trends. We saw how non-flexible that was during COVID. For the most part. And there's some great systems out there, don't get me wrong, but we just haven't changed or applied new techniques to it over the past 30 years. So with FLYR, it was just something completely new. It's AI based, so the algorithms change. Machine learning, we get asked very often, like, what's your percentage of competitive rates, or how much, what's this data source, how much you put in? It's like, it could change. It's different. It's learning. It's basing, experimentation. We update as often as 24 times a day, and constantly reevaluate, and the algorithms grow and change and learn. And that's the beauty of artificial intelligence. So it's a great product, and it's time to jump on.
And was this like your role at FLYR? Was this sort of your signifying your jump into sort of the technology space, or did you have like roles before that? Or
I did. I was always the biggest user in pretty much every company of technology from a business side. We had to connect the holodeck system in IHG to Expedia and build that out. As the executive sponsor for it, it was a $6 million project. Sort of build that, basically replicate the entire database of rates and inventory, so we can go ahead and push those off. So while I wasn't on the tech side, I was interim CIO at Omni for about 9 months because we lost our CEO. I was the biggest user, and they needed just some executive presence down there. So I did that for a while. So yeah, never really in the tech field, but always pulled into it.
Like an early adopter, basically.
Definitely an early adopter. I like to understand how the new things that are out there, especially outside the industry, how can they be applied and how can we use it? And our industry is really slow to change. And I just saw a post on LinkedIn by a friend of mine, Tebow. He posted the myths or misconceptions of revenue management and top 10, and it was the same 10 misconceptions we were dealing with 30 years ago. It's too expensive. I can't afford to do this. It's too complicated. It's more of an art than a science. All these things that have been really proven, and we're still litigating it as should we do revenue management? I think that's ridiculous. When you start thinking about how the industry is going to adopt AI, we can't. We have some people who think I don't need a website still, if there's not that many, but. The internet's not a fad. AI is not a fad. It's going to be integrated into everything we do. And what surprises me most is when you talk to people who sometimes say, "Well, my GM can do this," or we can do it better on our own. When you ask them about their personal lives, the new tech is integrated completely into what they're doing. Their phone is never more than 2 or 3 years old. They're using AI. They're using ChatGPT. They're using Netflix recommendations or Amazon recommendation, which is all machine learning and all, AI based. And when you say, well, we got to put this in the hotel space, they're like, oh, we don't need that. It baffles me sometimes.
What do you think is, and I suppose this is $1 million question, and I have raised this with certain with previous guests that I've actually had on the podcast as well. But sort of what would be needed to shift that mindset? Because I think maybe in the day to day, like people, maybe they're very operationally focused, and it's sort of like, okay, there's so much technology out there, and there's so many different things to choose from. So maybe it can seem like noise, and then knowing where to invest and what to prioritize might seem a bit like a bit of a jungle, as it were. But what would be your way to kind of simplify that and like communicate that value? Like, this is the way that it can, forward for your business, and this is why you should adopt X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, there's some simple things that you can talk through, especially for a revenue management system. There's some, believe it or not, old tools. Like there was this old thing, 5-room hotel, where you just had reservations come in, have someone do it manually, and invariably, if you just let the reservations come in without doing any sort of pricing management, yield management, anything, I think the number was like $18.50 for the week you made. If you optimize, it was $22.50. It was like this huge increase. Invariably, though, a lot of GMs, when they took it, and I taught this class because I taught a class. I put about 900 people through it, and it was for a couple of management companies. So it was operators, revenue managers, directors of sales, GMs, and anyone else who wanted to go through. Invariably, the GMs did the worst on it. 40% of them did less than $18.50. Did worse than if they just left it alone and didn't do anything. Now that was a while ago when I've done that, and hopefully we've gotten better as an industry. But we need to do some proof points on those things. Another exercise I did, there was this 1-room hotel open for 1 day with 5 different rates, and just going through the math on what's the right price based on flip a coin where the demand is 50-50, it's either come or not, black or white. It takes a whole whiteboard, right? And this is a 1-room hotel for 1 night. So trying to make those cases to say, this is the right thing to do. And then there's, structural issues with the industry. There's three people in every asset typically. There's a brand, a manager, and an owner. And depending on the way people are incentivized or how they make their money, if you've got an owner that's investment board investor, just real estate investor, and they're at 5-year horizon, during year 4, they're not going to spend any capital they're not going to see the return on it because they're going to flip the hotel in the next 12 months. Managers have different incentives. Typically, they want to see overall revenue increase, but you can also do crazy things on the revenue side. I had an owner tell me once, your job is just to get Smith Travel. I said, well, there's other things, profit. And he goes, I can't make it any simpler. It's Smith Travel. I said, well, that's easy. I'll just do a deal with Booking.com and tell them they have to fill every room every night for 90% commission. And my Smith Travel report will look fantastic. STR now, I guess it's not Smith Travel anymore. But, he said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Well, yeah, because it's about profits. And, we sometimes have simple metrics in the industry that don't align with the long-term value of the asset. Everyone's got their competing things. So you end up with this, almost gridlock on moving things forward. The brands a lot of times have to put the tech together. The owners don't want to pay for the tech. The management companies then try to figure out if they can actually use the tech properly. There's a lot of structural issues that just, halt progress to the industry. But I think there'll be people who lead the way. There's going to be innovation happening with, I think, especially larger independent hotels, resorts. They seem to be driving a lot of great innovation just because they own it, they manage it, they can see the ROI. They're typically owned by private equity or something who really want to just drive the overall asset value and know if they get the technology right, they'll be able to drive more value.
Yeah. And on the online distribution side, would you say there's kind of a tendency, and I know this is something as well in conversations that I've had, that this has also been addressed a bit, but kind of this, in terms of distributing the inventory, sometimes there's not really this, focus on the whole picture of okay, you're giving away your inventory, you're putting your inventory here, but then, there's the costs of the commissions, and it might seem easier for your visibility to be doing it that way. Right. But then, it's having an impact on your profits. And how do you shift that mindset where it's it's important to actually, use technology as an enabler to own your business, own your brand, look at your rates, look at what's going on, what is on your direct channel, what you're giving to the third parties, and so on. What would be your advice to kind of drive that point home? Because that also seems to be something that I guess is a bit of an oversight with some, I won't say all, but in some hotels in the industry.
And so the problem with it is structurally, we still have things split up. So there's no one responsible for the full commercial framework in a hotel or sometimes in a company. So, the distribution, the onward distribution was really created quite a few issues with wholesale and onward distribution. And, we were giving rates out and then surprised that they ended up on the internet. And when you think about what traditional wholesale rates were meant to do, they're supposed to be packaged up and get you into markets you couldn't otherwise get. And once again, this is where the industry is slow to change. The rationale for wholesale rates made perfect sense before 1995. I worked in Orlando in a hotel, and we had a lot of wholesale rates. But if I wanted to get my German customers to come in, I could either do marketing there. I was a single hotel, so that was difficult. Put a salesperson on the ground there. Once again, single hotel, that was difficult. Or outsource that effort to a third-party wholesaler. But they had special requirements. They needed to be able to publish the catalogs, believe it or not, before the internet. And that's a hangover from this. So we gave them static rates. And then they had people walking into their door, and they had to go ahead and confirm the inventory right then. So they had to write out a voucher. So they had to know they had 10 rooms to sell, and you declined the allotment. So the reason for the allotments and static contracts are for that. Well, as soon as the internet came and as soon as you started connecting everything, all those reasons went away.
Right.
The wholesalers loved it because they still had sometimes cheaper rates than the hotels had themselves and guaranteed inventory. But the hotels never pushed back and said, you don't need this anymore. There's a new way of doing it. And we still had whole sales teams going out there and selling this stuff. And we still do in some cases. Now, it's changed, but it's taken, I'm talking 95. I mean, the internet is not a new thing. And I had different rates for my guys in Brazil versus Germany. So, as soon as the internet came, though, the Germans were booking through the Brazilian wholesaler to come into Orlando. All the rationale for what we did went away, but yet we're still doing it the same way. And I think that's part of the industry is we're slow to change. We're also very fearful that someone's going to get something that I'm not, and a lot of the GMs and people within the industry don't understand. It's gotten much better, but don't understand where their inventory is going, what's happening. They can see X wholesaler generated 200 rooms last month. If you turn off X wholesale, it would probably go to Booking.com, your direct channels, other things. You can see what's happening with it in aggregate. But when you go look at that account, I lost 200 rooms. And it's that type of mentality, not fully understanding what's going on or having the right commercial leadership where you say, we're going to get that back to 200 rooms. It's going to come because those people were booking through that wholesaler. Some of them were corporate business. Some of it was, Booking.com customers. Some of it was Expedia customers. A lot of them were direct customers. They just found cheaper rates. And you can have the best brand, best hotel in the world, but if it's $30 cheaper to book and you can see it right on Google Meta, why wouldn't you click on it? I mean, I know there's a whole bunch of other reasons, but a lot of customers don't know why. So they're like, oh yeah, I'll save $30.
Yeah, and especially if there's I don't know, we've done a recent study as well where there's like cancellations and stuff are usually on the third party or in the intermediary. So that as well is another layer of I guess a complication there. But yeah, you spoke previously like about sort of a need like for the industry to shift more towards like prioritizing a commercial strategy, and I can definitely agree with that. Like not only with the evolution of technology, but also the evolution of guest demands. Like as technology grows increasingly more sophisticated, there's more expectations. But in your opinion, what would be like the specific trends? I guess we could narrow them down to like 2 to 3 really top trends that are really driving this like necessity for this shift towards more of a holistic commercial strategy within hotels specifically.
Well, I think the trend is no one can do anything by, and when I say no, individual departments really can't do anything by themselves without impacting other groups this time. If I've got sales doing, and this was always the case to a degree, but because of the internet, which is not a new thing, there's information that goes back and forth all the time. There's complete transparency, which is a good thing for consumers and a good thing for us, but we have to realize that's the case. So if you give a group rate to someone, everyone's going to know what that group rate is. It's going to get out somehow. If it's higher than your retail pricing, you're going to have major problems. If it's lower than your retail pricing, you're going to have problems. You've got to be able to sell it properly. You've got to be able to bundle it properly. There's things you have to do. Same thing with the corporate rate, same thing with everything. So you really have to understand that the transparency is there. You can't just say, well, stop it or do anything. If you give out a rate, it will get out there. So then what protections can you put in and what's the rationale that makes sense on why a group rate might be more? Is there something packaged in with it, or are they getting free internet or free parking, whatever it is? Are they getting attrition clauses? There's a whole bunch of reasons on why this makes sense. And if a group rate's double, doesn't matter what you put in there, they're going to book the cheaper direct thing. So you have to understand it completely in order to drive the best profitability for the hotel, because typically you make those decisions based on I'm going to price this way based on the customer behavior I'm dictating. Well, customers are going to act the way they want to act. So you got to deal with reality, not what you think, and pricing accordingly, market accordingly, and really, give the customers what they want, how they want it, and just take that into consideration. I think, some of the new trends with attributes and attribute pricing increases the complexity. So how are you going to, price your add-ons and your cabanas, or, better floors, better rooms, rollaway beds, connecting rooms. There's all the things that you can do, whether you're, a resort, you have a lot of opportunities, but even smaller hotels that aren't resorts and roadside have some opportunities. And you've got to look at it in totality. Otherwise, you're just going to be rowing in slightly different directions, whether that's sales, marketing, distribution, digital, revenue, and that doesn't make a successful hotel. Everyone's got to be pulling in the same direction.
Yeah. And I guess having everything consolidated, whether it's through like a platform or something, everything consolidated in one place. So like how your marketing, metrics are going, but then also the revenue side, and having that in real time would be helpful. Is there any? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, and I'll tout a little bit what we've done, but I was trying to do the same thing at Ambridge. The BI and getting the data and information with one single pane of glass is extremely important, and becomes more so. You want to have one place where you can go and look at what's on the books, what's happening when I change my prices, what's going on, what impact does it have, what's my segmentation, what's my room type mix, what are all the things that are happening to my hotels and my inventory in the future. So if I try something, I can measure the results and make a change, or do more of it before it happens. Typically as an industry, we try something, wait till the date passes, saw if it was a winner or a loser, and then try to replicate it again. We've got to be able to do it before the date happens, so you can make the impact. And some of the things we're looking at are, because we built a revenue management solution first, right, with the AI algorithm engine that powers it. We were asked to do reporting, and this was before I got with the company. The team said, well, why just do reporting? We have all this granular data. We have it down to the transaction level. Let's do a complete BI solution for you. And we found, and we've had customers now that are buying that standalone, especially we have some people in brands that are buying that standalone because they already have a branded revenue management system or solution. But they need the additional insights, and we're partnering with some different people like Amaze to try to get some of the sales and catering views on that, and we'll eventually have Cody and Google Analytics and all that stuff in there, so you can have a true commercial platform and dashboard. That's the vision. We have all the core stuff now, and it's amazing. I think if you're going to be a commercial leader, you need to look at all those areas and have views on it. And that was one of the most frustrating things I had about my last company, Ambridge. When I first got there was nothing. I'd get asked, well, how are we doing next month? I'm like, well, people aren't complaining that much, so we must be doing okay. That's not a real good place to be. So, we spent a lot of time and effort and money trying to cobble things together in order to get a view on what are we doing next month? What are we doing next year? Are there hotels that are suffering? How do we be proactive about it? And I think that's critically important.
And in terms of hotels, like adopting these kind of solutions, like, are there any that stand out to you, and how do they have any impact to speak of, like that? I don't know, that in a way that it's how adopting these kind of solutions have impacted their commercial strategy in the current climate.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to sit here and do an advertisement for us, but there are a lot of great players out there on the hotel side that are doing some innovation. I was talking to Christy Gachot, who does the KSL Resort portfolio, and once again, it's private equity, it's independent resorts. They can do a lot of things, and she's super smart. And she's taking a look at how do I look at things commercially, how do I look at it across the board, and the results are better. She's got a lot of things she can play with. So how do I maximize the asset? How do I get the ancillaries? How do I maximize the cabanas? And I was doing some of the same things at Omni Hotels because we did have a lot of resorts, and once again, we were the brand, we were the manager, and we were the owner. So we could do some really great things. And an example with just even cabanas, ancillaries, just getting the data. We started digging into one of the hotels. They had 300 cabanas, and I said, "What's the price?" And they said, "Well, it's $250." It's like, "Well, what if it's raining?" "Well, it's $250." "Well, it's 4 p.m." "Well, it's $250." And it was run by the activities desk, and right at the pool. And when you think about it, $250 at 300 cabanas, that's a decent sized hotel if you take a look at it from a 300 room hotel with a $250 ADR. They were running 25% occupancy, and there was a lot of customers. So just taking that view and getting the data, and then looking at how do we maximize the overall revenue for the asset, and revenue per square foot or meter. There's new ways to take a look at that. We've got some customers that are looking at things at revenue per square meter. How do we maximize the asset? How do we really get, and that's how real estate and retail likes to look at. How do we get the most out of the asset?
Great. And sort of drawing on your operational experience, and again, I think this is something that could be of use to, like, let's say I'm a hotelier and you want to start, okay, I want to start working with a system and I need to see what aligns best with my business. What would be sort of your advice for hotels to evaluate in the sea of options that are out there? In a very simplified step-by-step kind of plan, okay, how do you evaluate this? How does this align with my business, and so on and so forth, and make that commitment to invest in that?
Yeah, look, I used to, because while I am in technology and was I guess interim CIO, I'm not a technologist. So I always had a couple of proof points that I would use to say, is this technology good? And from a business standpoint, like if I know it's doing this, then I know it's working properly. I might be able to do the regression analysis of the algorithms, and I wouldn't want to, but I could just ask a couple of questions and see what was happening. So as far as all technology, the entire technology stack, is it new? Is it open? Can I do things quickly with it? Is it in the cloud? Those are some of the first things you'd ask. And can you do things quickly? There's a lot of integrations that happen that just take forever. We literally can turn on especially with cloud-based PMS, like Muse, Cloudbed, Stay in Touch. We could turn things on in 4 hours, extract the data. We can start giving recommendations in 4 to 5 days and forecasts in 4 to 5 days. Now, typically that would take 3 months to start to get good recommendations, because you would have to do the 12-week trends and 2 years history, right? You have to build that history up. So you can ask some questions like, how long does it take to integrate in real time? How long does it take to get into automation for revenue management solutions? For PMSs, and is it in the cloud? What type of for RMS, I would do a lot more questions on RMS, just because that's typically what I was responsible for selecting. How do you manage displacement? So when you take a look at group, there's some RMSs out there that if you had a 100-room hotel, I would put in a 100-room group for a Wednesday night, and if it told me I displaced 100 rooms, I knew it wasn't really sophisticated, because there's secondary displacement. If I put a 100-room group in for Wednesday night in a 100-room hotel, I'm going to have displacement from that group on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, all the other days surrounding, because of the sell-through. So is the system taking into consideration all those things, or is it just doing primary displacement, not the secondary? then it's not sophisticated. So there was a couple of proof points like that I would do to say, are these things really, whatever the salesperson's telling me, how do they work in practice? How is it going to impact my business? Because if you add up all the different, every system that's out there, whether it's, upgrade systems, revenue management system, PMSs, ancillary, everyone says they're going to increase your RevPAR, 5%. When you add them all up, you get like a 90% RevPAR increase. That's not going to happen. So you've got to really question and pressure test and put some reality into it. And some of the claims are real. The problem is there's a lot of claims out there that aren't, and I think it hurts. It hurts the industry. Let's face it, owners are on the hook for everything. They're typically not experts in the space. They're experts, super smart in real estate and financing and all that. So everyone's coming to them saying, invest in X and you'll get Y. A lot of them have tried to invest X and they got well shy of Y. So, a lot of them just sit back and say, I'm going to wait 5, 10, 15 years. I'm happy with my returns now. I'm hitting my pro forma. Do I want to just spend the money and then basically throw it away? There are ways to really, I think, get with the right partners, and you will drive returns, but you've got to understand what those are.
Ask the right questions, I guess, and hope that get the answers that you need. Well, I think this is kind of a good opportunity for us to dive into sort of a topic that was briefly mentioned in the beginning about the difference between or the importance of generating profitable revenue and not just like all revenue. So I think maybe just to strip it down and make it as simple as possible, I'll start off by asking, like, how would you make that? Like, what is your distinguishment between all revenue and profitable revenue? That would be the first question. And then how can hotels specifically, I guess, do a better job of kind of distinguishing between the two and then, prioritizing, okay, well, we need to, generate the profitable side.
Well, I think it's understanding, the profitability of each type of revenue stream. So, understanding by channel. So, or account. So, what is my OTA business? What's the profit, cost of acquisition there? Direct channel. There are costs in your direct channel. Typically a lot less than your OTA, but there are costs you got to take into consideration. Also, types of business. If I put in, let me use a group business, that is a corporate customer coming in for a conference, or quad occupancy football team cheerleaders, the costs are going to be very, very different on servicing those rooms and what's going on. So, understanding not only the distribution costs and the cost of acquisition, but the actual cost of service the groups or whatever business out there is really important. And then also the ancillary spend. We also often hear that, groups, they've got guaranteed banquet and everything else. Well, there's also, if you're transient, they could be doing spa and golf and other things. So understanding that mix, right? If you're at a resort and you have everyone sitting in, a meeting room, no one's on your golf course and no one's in your spa, that's a missed opportunity. So getting the mix right. So you have to understand where you stand. I think that's why the BI solution is so important. You understand, what's out there with our system. And there are good systems out there. We allowed you to enrich the data. So, if it's an Expedia booking and it's got a 18% commission, you can put in 18%, and everything that comes in with our rate code, you can go ahead and track. So you can see the net cost, the true cost in there, net revenue on all your channels, and then come up with a plan. It really, and I wish there was here's the magic formula. It's going to be different for every hotel and every market with whatever demands there and whatever the asset has to offer. But you have to understand where you start, what the costs are first, and where you start and what's out there. So when you have that, you can start to go ahead and put the right mix together. If you've got, at Omni, we used to try to get around 50+% group business, and group up, which sounds great, and it was a guarantee of revenue being there in case there was a slowdown. But I always thought that if we did maybe 40-45% group, we'd be better off. And it's hard to pressure test that, especially those hotels, the big hotels, they book out long. But COVID allowed us to do that, take a negative and turn it into a positive. And you started to layer in more transient businesses, switch that mix. The overall profitability went up through the roof, because there was a lot of other things in ancillary spend and total room spend or total RevPAR, really went up. So understanding what's there, you're gonna have to trial and error different things and put together strategies and then measure and see if it's successful. And that's why data and BI is so important, because a lot of times our hotels are flying blind, and we've got smart people trying to do good things, but just getting a P&L at the end is not going to allow you to really have a crisp strategy. You can do things shotgun approach, but you won't be able to do things really, really crisply. And that's what's going to be needed in the future to beat your competition. Because your competition, someone's going to start doing that.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I mean, it's a good point that you mentioned about like any, even the direct revenue, it's, there is the costs involved with that. And something that we, I guess, like encourage hotels quite a lot on our side is, incentivizing more of that direct business through like, just making more like distinguished offers on the direct channels versus, the others, where the inventory is distributed. But I guess the question I would have in line with that would be sort of knowing where you can add that value, but then in a way that you're not just throwing something on a wall and hoping it sticks. Like, what would be your advice to hotels in terms of evaluating, okay, let's make these incentives, but then, weighing up those costs and making sure that that's profitable? I don't know if the question makes sense, but
No, it does. It does. Look, let me answer that with start of the end, because I've been saying this for a couple of years now when we started doing attributes and things. But I think if you start it with the end vision in mind, right, you get to a segmentation of one, right? You can really understand the value of a customer, what they're spending, what their profitability is, what their entire share of wallet, and how do you steal, or not steal, but get more of it for you, making them very happy because it's what they want. So let me just give you the scenario. If you travel, 7-8 times a year, you go and stay at a city center. Maybe you always like a king, or maybe it's an airport hotel. You like a king size bed, eat breakfast. I know that about you. I know you go to these 3 cities. I also know you have a family. You like to go to spring break. You like the beach. Okay, so I know that, and I know that you probably argue about it over Christmas. Right after Christmas is over, you're just like, okay, we need a break. What's happening in spring break? First, second week in January, I know you're going to start looking. So I should be able to serve you up the right offers, family suites as opposed to normal king size bed, for resorts and and beach resorts and that type of stuff. I know that if you'll have a higher probability of booking that time. And then maybe 3 weeks prior to arrival, you'll sit down. I know you sort of, well, what are we going to do when we get there? We're getting excited. You start, that might be the highest conversion for the spa, the golf, the wave runner, maybe I want, dinners and breakfast as a part of the package, whatever it is. I can start serving those up to you. And then because I have your airline data, I know that you're leaving at 8 p.m. the night you leave. I know the highest probability of getting you to buy a late checkout is when you check in. And I offer you a pay for an extra $150. You can have a 4 p.m. checkout on the Sunday. All those things. If I know about all that stuff, I know it's things you're probably going to want to buy. If I don't sell them to you, you might go off, do something else, which I wouldn't want. I'm giving it to you at the right time you're thinking about it. And it should be a really good experience for you, and I get more share of wallet. So it's a win-win. You get exactly what you want when you want it, and I get more share of wallet. Now, we can't do that right now as an industry. We can do pieces of it, though. And I think if you start with the end in mind, if I want to be able to do all the things, well, then what do I need? I need to understand the profitability of each one of those components. I need to understand the overall revenue spend or predicted spend for that customer and how profitable they are. I need to understand that, I know they have a family. I know they're going to go to spring break. I know all those other things about them. I need to be able to serve up the right offers at the right time, get them to go into the correct marketing channels, target the customer, and do all those things. And everyone's got a great, it's a win-win for everyone. So, like I said, we can't do all that now, but we can do pieces of it. And then how do you break that? That's a segmentation of one. So how do I go ahead and say, okay, what can I do now? And what do I need to do in order to get to that end state? And, we got to start building that out. I think first is understanding the profitability of all the channels, getting the data, starting with all that stuff. Do you have the right tech stack? Do you have a way to put together offers and package those up properly? Do you have the ability to target the right individual, if it's segmentation one, or cohorts now? Maybe we can do the right psychographics and demographics that you can go ahead and target the right people. I mean, we've gotten very, very sophisticated compared to where we were just 10, 15 years ago on what we can do with digital, what data we have, what consumer information we have, what attributes we can sell, how do we monetize everything. So we're putting the pieces, they're disparate right now, but pulling that together, and it goes back to that commercial strategy. How do I pull that whole thing together and make sure that the data and information I have in your core system, and I do believe, and I've said this before, it's probably the revenue management. I've been calling it an offer engine, but it's putting all that together and then having your marketing team, or if it's I need sales business or whatever it is, having your sales be deployed properly, or here's the offers for, I'd rather maybe give a corporate group less than a dance troupe. I know that sounds crazy. No one will go do that now, but if my cost is, 25% of what the dance group is, you know what? I might want to do it, especially, when they come in. And maybe not, maybe it doesn't make sense because it's over busy dates, but we don't take into consideration those things and all the components. We just kind of shotgun approach everything. And I think the more we become really, really sophisticated about how we approach customers and give them what they want, the better we'll do. And the only way you can do that is with technology. The reason why we have the shotgun approach is it's too complex. You can't do all that. You can't put together 1,000 offers. You can't have a segmentation of one. The reason why we have segments is because that's all we can handle. We would probably have more segments if we can handle more. So I think technology allows us to do that. And by not embracing that, I don't think you're optimizing your asset properly.
Yeah, and I think something also to consider is the fact, like with I guess guests that engage directly with your hotel brand, there's also that opportunity for more like upselling of the other products you might have, but then also, opportunities for loyalty. But something with that like obviously the big brands like the Hiltons and the Marriotts, they have their programs and stuff, but do you see that sort of in more of the independent hotels and small group side, or because that it seems like it's a bit more of a slower
it's harder for them. Obviously the brands help. Once again, a lot of brands, it's shotgun approach. You know what you get. I mean, Marriott's great. They do a great job, and Bonvoy's Bonvoy, but the brands are trying to be all things to all people. And that's just the nature of the brands. And the bigger they are, the more they're, and they've tried to segment their hotels, and let's face it, they do a great job, and they really drive asset value for owners. So I do think, though, the independents have a lot of opportunity to really become independent. The one thing about a brand is a promise, and you can have an independent hotel and a brand. And what do you do, and how do you differentiate yourself? I think that's where the big hotel companies have a problem, because differentiation is hard, and a lot of it's cookie cutter. For an individual hotel, you can do a lot of things. The problem is getting people to understand there's a cost involved, right? And typically you go in like, I'm not going to spend $50,000 on a marketing campaign, but yet they'll spend $100,000 in commissions to Expedia and Booking.com, which have just outsourced their revenue, and it's going to not build upon itself. You're not going to get the loyalty to that asset, and they're going to go back through Booking.com and Expedia next time. So getting the right strategy on how do I market the property, how do I create some differentiation, spend some money to make some money. If you spend money, you'll probably end up saving more money in the long run, because there is a cost to acquisition. And if you build the loyalty and you build a following, that cost will go down over time. But you've got to spend the money. And typically, as an industry, which is why everything's on a commission basis. We don't like to spend money up front. We will spend it. We'll give you, if you deliver, I'll give you money. Well, great. I mean,
but would you say maybe one way, I don't know, maybe it's an overly simplistic perspective on this, but like with more of the independent brands and the smaller hotels and things like that, would it be a matter of, sort of identifying, okay, this is actually your profile of property, this is what your brand is, and these are the customers that you should be talking to, and this is how you should be shaping your offers. It should be around this target market. Whereas like the pitfall is that these smaller hotels, maybe they're trying to do like be all things to all people and then kind of getting a bit lost in that mix. Would you say that that's a bit of a...
Yeah, it's harder to do. Typically, a lot of hotels like I want to be a extended stay. Well, yeah, as soon as there's not enough extended stay business because they didn't do the marketing, they didn't get the right stuff, they'll open up for one night and they destroy their economics. There's and it takes time to build those brands. It takes money. It doesn't happen overnight. There are, and we used to do this at Ambridge and Kimpton when we had it. They did a great job of finding the persona for the asset. They would literally, we'd have a new asset. They would pick, here's the person. Here's your ideal customer. His name is Tom. Here's Fiona. Whatever it is, and they would rate their whole life. And this is who we're selling to. We're going to do the service around this person. We're going to make our sales around this person. And it might be one or two people. Typically, it was one type of person that we'd say, this is who we want to do, and be very, very true to that. And Kimpton's a great example of a brand that came up through the boutique space doing exactly that. And they had a following. They weren't for everyone, but they, drove a really fantastic ADR, and they had a following, and they had people who were loyal to that hotel and that brand. But it took time. Bill Kitten didn't do it overnight. It took time, and that's typically and sustained effort. It's not like I can just spend my marketing dollars now. You build up brand equity by spending money, and it takes a long time. Now, it also takes a long time for you to drain that equity. And some of the big brands over time have done that. They became real big. They were great, and then they didn't invest in it. They let franchisees do what they want. And there's a lot of case studies on that where you can take equity out of the brand, and it takes a long time for them to go away. But if you're an independent property, it's a sustained effort. You'll be very successful. You will be able to make a lot of money, but you can't cut corners on it. You just can't wish a brand into existence. You have to build it and nurture it and spend money on it.
Yeah. And because I think sometimes also with sort of it's not just a matter sometimes of like the investment that goes into actually building the brand, owning it and managing it autonomously, but sometimes a tendency of like, oh, we're so busy with all our operations, let's just, fall under an umbrella or hand it to, an agency or some experts that can, look after it. And then they kind of just relinquish that control just, with the short-sighted, like, we're going to have some operational ease with that. Would you, it's something that, probably wouldn't be so good to recommend in terms of owning your business, but like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, there's some structural things in the industry. There's pros and cons. We've always been GM centric. And that's great. It served things well. And I was a GM, so I can pick on them a little bit. But a lot of our GMs are service and operations based and oriented. They're not revenue oriented, and some of them are very good at revenue, but they're still not experts in that. And they're very, very different skill sets, and sometimes we don't have the right level of sophistication on the commercial side. Sometimes we don't have the right level of sophistication on the operation side, but the tendency is our general managers are more operations focused, and have been, because that's typically where they've come up through. And you don't, then there's urgency too, and you end up doing what's urgent and not important, or urgent, just because you've got someone sitting there yelling at you, and that is important. Don't get me wrong, but if you don't build your brand up over time, you're just going to be dealing with the same problems over and over and over again. So you've got to do both. And are you giving, the right amount of resource allocation and space for people to do both? And if you've got someone who's saying, well, let's say, let's flip it around, corporate and the dance group. Let's say the dance group is much more profitable for some reason. Maybe they had a whole bunch of other things. Well, it's an operational nightmare, right? I've seen GM say, we will never do this again. Like, okay. And there could be a reason why. And if it costs us operations and the profitability drain, but if we're just hard, I don't care if we're going to make more profit over it. Like, just, we got to figure out how to service them properly. Just hard. You can't just say no. So sometimes we have, these competing things within an asset, and, are you spending the time and dedicating the resources? We won't spend them, and OTA is a great example. We won't spend the money on digital, but we'll outsource that digital effort to an OTA and spend 2 or 3x. So, by not doing it or not making a decision about it, you're outsourcing it, because you still have to run the occupancy and fill the hotel. And you probably could be more profitable if you actually spent some money on it and did it on your own.
Yeah. And I guess it still goes back to that risk of what we spoke of earlier, to your point of things being a little bit disjointed. And if you're relinquishing that control, in a sense, it's kind of, who knows what they can do. So yeah. But you mentioned earlier, and you even in your previous comments, and I think maybe just to take a step back to kind of also simplify this concept a little bit, but like maximizing the entire asset and not just the room revenue. So in what ways are other areas of travel and the travel and hospitality industry maximizing all their assets, and not just the core revenue? And how can hotels kind of, I guess, replicate that in a sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot. You just do a simple one, menus in restaurants or outlets, or, a lot of them are becoming digital. Most of them are. Change the price. Why don't we change the price on the fly? We know what's selling. You've got whether it's your Toast or whatever point of sale system, what's selling, what isn't selling. If you're at a convention hotel, for example, everyone's going to have a break at noon, and your outlets are going to slam. Well, take up the price. If you're dead, take down the price. Those customers aren't like they're there every day. If you go, if it's $8.95 for a burger, and it ends up being $11.95 when during a peak time, you're still going to maximize your pricing and your profitability based on supply and demand. We do it in other places. Say the meeting rooms. We still, if I asked 9 out of 10 hotels what their occupancy is on a meeting space, they wouldn't be able to tell me. Now, how can you possibly try to maximize the asset if you don't even know how busy it is? How are you selling it? Why are you selling it? Why are you selling it the way you're selling it? It goes back to, you need the information. You need the business intelligence. You need a commercial platform in order to understand that stuff. And then you can start doing things against it. You can start making strategies. You can start maximizing. And whether that's cabanas, the example I gave was $250 no matter what. Like, that's crazy. Why would you ever do that? If it's raining and someone wants to, yeah. If you tell them $250, well, I just want to sit here and read a book, but it's raining, so I just do this. $250 is not a nice day, or it's 4 p.m. I just want an hour. The sun's going down in 2 hours. I just want an hour. They do it for 100. They might not do it for 250. So, and maybe 250 is right. I don't know, but I don't have the data. I couldn't tell you. And that's what I guess that's my point. With anything that we're selling or anything that could be sold in the hotel, in the asset, do we have the information on it? Do we know who's buying it? Why are they buying it? What's the pricing? Is the pricing right? Um, what's the elasticity of the pricing? We don't know any of that stuff in many cases. Some of the more creative and innovative players are really digging into that and really trying to make that work. But we're just at the cusp, and we've been talking about total hotel revenue management forever, and very few people really practice it.
Yeah, I guess there's still a ways to go, and also that getting more of that buy-in to those like consolidated solutions where you can get more of those real-time insights and actually adhere and reshape the offers around that and maximize those components. But sort of looking to, I guess now this is kind of the fun part, because we kind of looked at like the evolution and where we're at now and sort of the challenges, and sort of looking to the future, and I guess not just for revenue management but technology as a whole. What would be like one to three predictions, let's say, that you have for the future of our industry that might surprise our viewers, and why?
I'll do two positive and one negative. um, Positive. I do believe that the systems will be, people will put in full hotel stacks, and they will be integrated, and data will be able to be shared seamlessly across systems, and you'll get great views on that stuff. Two, AI, and I know everyone says AI, but AI can really be incorporated from a labor savings, from a scheduling, getting the right people in the right in the hotel. I mean, in every aspect of the asset, right? So I mentioned some things on revenue management with machine learning algorithms, but even simple things like scheduling and housekeeping and concierge services, and it should. AI is going to be incorporated in every part of our life. Why would we think it couldn't be incorporated in every part of the hotel? So, so that those two things. I know everyone says it, but it really, I think the more we spend on that type of stuff and figure out how to use it best, and how to give, not to use it just for use sake, but to give guests a better experience, to drive more profits for us. That's good. And then the third trend, it will take much longer than it should. And I can make all the compelling arguments and reasons, but our industry, it just takes a long time. And that's a fear that if we don't do it for ourselves, someone will come in and do it for us or to us. So I think there's a lot of great partners out there, a lot of industry technology players who want to work as part of the overall ecosystem, but there will be outside forces that will come in and say, you know what, I can just disintermediate whatever it is. Concierge. So I don't even know. I mean, we didn't know what the internet would bring when it came. If we don't do this holistic, joined up way to offer things to customers, someone will figure it out for us and then charge us a lot. So we can either do it ourselves and do it right, or we don't, and someone will figure out how to do it for us, but then charge us 2x to 3x what we could have just spent on our own.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you mentioned about AI, because we've seen how the industry has evolved so much, and it's like very increasingly competitive for the digital real estate, as it were. You've got the OTAs, but then also the Google and everything like that. And with the way like AI is going to continue impacting, I guess, how we search, how we plan for travel and things like that, what would be the impact, in your opinion, on the hotels, and what would be your advice to hotels in terms of adapting to this? Do you think it's going to be something that will happen in sort of the next 10 years? Will it be much slower? And how can hotels start taking those steps to kind of start
It will happen. Yeah, it'll happen to us before 10 years. That's why I hope it doesn't take us 10 years to figure out what we want to do. Yeah, I'm going to lean on the brands. The brands have always been seen as the owners of the technology for the industry because they can get network effects and they've got thousands of hotels. The owners pay for everything. And that's just the way the model works. The owners pay franchise fees and tech fees to the brands. The brands go ahead and cobble it together because an individual owner couldn't do as well buying all this stuff. So there's economies of scale. The brands have typically only cared about room revenue. That's how they're paid, gross room revenue. So when you talk about total asset or adding new things in, they typically haven't because they're not getting paid. I think those types of things need to get solved, and the brands really need to take a lead on that stuff in order to get large scale adoption and the industry to move forward. I think without the brands doing it, the industry will get disintermediated somehow through AI. That said, conversely, I think we're also at a time where technology has gotten much, much cheaper. I do think that strong independent hotels and independent resorts and brand can do things on their own when they don't have to rely on the brand. And there'll be some great innovations that come out, and there's some really forward-thinking hotels and groups that do move things forward without it, using incorporating AI and driving more direct and doing ancillaries and a whole bunch of different things that they can do. The problem is I don't know if that'll drive the industry, because it still leaves a lot of room for a lot of big external forces to come in and do what the OTAs did, just take a big chunk of the pie.
And do you have some specific examples to share of like independent hotels specifically that are sort of jumping on this evolution?
Yeah, I mean, we work with the Boca Raton as an example. They've completely, they put in a tremendous amount of capital, reposition the entire asset. They've got a vision. They've got a chief commercial officer, Lori Keel. They got a vision on where they want to take that property, how they want to explore it and break it up into 5 different sub hotels. They're putting in new technology stacks. They're doing some of the stuff I mentioned, KSL. There's some really great and interesting people out there that are doing some good things, but it's unfortunately not the majority.
And this is something I think that's kind of interesting in terms of like what area of the hotel do you think like it, when hotels eventually start adopting AI, like what areas do you think will be the first areas that will sort of start rolling out AI? Will it be more like the online distribution? Will it be the revenue management side?
Well, I mean, let's face it, revenue management is the precursor of
it's kind of
revenue management distribution. Even the GDS was e-commerce before there was e-commerce. I mean, so believe it or not, we do some things in the industry that is way ahead of time, and there is some machine learning and algorithms and revenue management systems for a long time. So that's there. I think the new stuff will be more visible to the guests. The concierge, put together I've got 8 hours in town, put together an itinerary for me, bespoke, and you can train a ChatGPT to do things that actually incorporate your asset as opposed to just generic. And other things that you can do as an example. I think there's going to be more things on the back of the house too, with the efficiency of staffing and how do we schedule people and just make sure that we have the right whatever it is, right food in house to sell, the right to people to service at the right time. That's all going to be important, and I think will probably be some of the first things that happen.
And something I think is quite interesting to ask as well, because obviously hospitality has historically, it's very like people orientated, it's very high touch kind of industry. And how do you think hotels should balance sort of leveraging technology to sort of adapt with the current trends, but then still maintain that human touch, as it were, and that personalization? Like, what would be your advice on that front?
Yeah, well, it comes back to the customer. We are a people business, and people do want to interact and get some some service. But I remember years ago, the luxury properties when the internet started, like, we will never sell online. The people love calling and talking to our agents, and just that's the way it is. We offer more service to the agents, and obviously the Four Seasons and the Ritz Carltons and the manager all sell online, sell the bulk of their business online. We can say no. People really love going to the front desk and standing there for 30 minutes and in the line. And I mean, people don't. There are interactions that you do have with people, and that is what makes it special. And typically, when someone remembers something about a resort or hotel, it's an interaction with some of the staff members. So I'm not minimizing that, but we've got to meet our customers where they are and where they want to be. And the more they incorporate these things into their lives, the more it'll be expected. I mean, think about when you used to check in on your airline. They were giving you points to use the kiosks and put it on your phone and all that stuff. No one likes to go to the desk now if they don't have to. Same thing with ATMs and banks. I mean, we've heard this 100 times before on how people love to talk to people. There is the service element, but let's take out the friction and the things that are not pleasant. And I think that's where you have the biggest impact.
Yeah, I've said this before, but I think for me, like, I am quite a DIY person on a consumer level. It's kind of like, let me just do things as quickly and easily as possible. But if I run into an issue in that process, that's where the human element is useful in terms of, I don't know, solving more like nuanced problems. And I think what sometimes, like, the frustration is with sometimes, I mean, even you see with some of the airlines or the platforms, like, that sell the inventory. It's, you want to get the customer service. Okay, you have a chat bot. And then the minute I get the chat bot, I'm just like, no. And
no, representative.
It's a real, labyrinth to find, okay, this is actually a phone number that you can call where there's going to be a person on the other side of the line to solve that issue. So, but yeah, I totally agree with what you said about making that as frictionless as possible. But yeah, I guess we'll see how it develops. And do you have, I don't know, I guess in your opinion, like, to sort of for hotels that are getting, or investing in these like platforms and AI and automation and so on. I think something that's important is sort of measuring the impact of these and what, the impact on the business performance. And what would be your advice on how they can do that? And then also, sort of see this is working, or, maybe this isn't aligning with our business. We should maybe switch to something else. What would be your recommendations on that?
Well, I mean, we have our metrics. We're all held accountable. That's, GOP if you're a DM, or, the overall revenue and STR numbers, or what, pro forma. We have our metrics. It's when you put this in, how does it impact? Can you isolate the impact of it? So if I'm putting in, a revenue management system, I'll use that. What's happening to my, my share? Am I stealing share from the competition? Am I driving more profitable business? Those are easy metrics to go ahead and measure. And if you're not, then you've got the wrong system. Same thing with if I put in something for productivity. Am I cutting hours? Am I doing more with less? There's very easy things to measure. Sometimes, though, without data and without that type of culture where it's data driven, it becomes more feeling. And then you're right. You get a lot of extraneous tools that go in that don't get utilized, and you're not being measured, and it's wasted money.
Yeah. Something that we spoke about a bit earlier, and I think it's important to maybe touch on this as well, is so there's this sort of trend. Well, it's not sort of a trend. We hear it a lot, like customers are increasingly demanding more of like these personalized experiences, and you just hear personalization everywhere. It's a bit of a buzzword now. Sometimes a lot of companies are implementing personalization, but it's maybe not done in, I don't know, in my opinion, maybe not done in the right way all the time. But what would be sort of your advice to actually deliver personalization in a way that resonates with the guests, that doesn't go a little bit overboard?
Creepy.
Or, yeah.
It's a hard way to balance it. I mean, it comes back, and that sounds like a broken record. It comes back to data, right? Do you have a CRM? Do you have the ability to find out enough about the customer in a creepy way that you can give them what they need? There's a lot of customers right now, especially anyone under 35, they don't have privacy. They know they don't have privacy, and they just give you. My kids give away everything to everyone. It's like, do you understand what you're giving? They don't care. Like, it's just easier. So fine, if that's what the customer says, I just wanted my life to be easier. Well, let's use that data and make it easier for them. But we've got to use it. How many times have you checked into a hotel, and everyone has this experience when you walk up, you've been there every week for 4 months, and they go, "Oh, is this your first time here?" It's like, no, I was here last week. I was here the week before. Like, it's not, you should know, and they don't. I mean, we've got to get the basics done as an industry, and that happens even at the biggest brands. And I know they've got the loyalty stuff right in front of them. So we've got to make sure we have the data, we're using the data, and we make it almost foolproof for the associates to interact with it. That's what that interaction I laid out with. I know so much about you. I know you have a flight, and I know that when you check in, that's the highest chance you will buy a late checkout. We should have that scripted. We should, hey, I know you've told us, because you told us you have an 8 p.m. flight. Your checkout time is at noon. Would you like to stay in the room for an extra 4 or 5 hours for X number of dollars, make you a little more comfortable for your family, and you have full use of the facilities? Right? Like, that is a very positive interaction. And if the customer already told you that they have an 8 p.m. flight, because they might have put it in TripIt or whatever other data we have access to, and they've given you access to it, then yeah, they've given it to you because they don't care. They want you to help them, right? It's not like you're searching it. They gave it to you on purpose. So we should help them with it as opposed to ignoring it. Or if we do use it, we do it in a creepy way. So how do you really make it starts with data, and how do you use it properly? And then you have to invest in the proper system. Do you have a CRM? Do you have the right, offer engine, revenue management system, solutions that can help you do that, property management systems?
And in terms of the data points, I guess, and looking at independent hotels again, it could be easy maybe to say like, oh, okay, well, there's so much data like available. How do we tailor with all these different like types of guests and stuff? Would there be, and I don't know, maybe it's a bit oversimplistic to look at it this way, but like, I don't know, a way to simplify, like, okay, we're going to segment or build a persona, like a customer persona based on these specific points. And if so, would there be specific points you would recommend as like a starting point for independent hotels to be like, okay, let's focus on these areas and then personalize based on that?
It almost starts with the technology, and it shouldn't, but without the tech stack, you can have all the, I mean, you can only go so far. And hotels did this before technology. I get that, but it was very, very hard, and it was cumbersome, and it wasn't as refined or personalized as consumers expect today. So it really does start with the tech stack. What is your PMS, your RMS, your CRM? How are you going out to customers with your CRM? How is that all interacted? Is it combined where it's talking back and forth? Do you have the right use cases and workflows so you can use it properly? Then identifying the consumers and who do you want to service? How do you want to service them? That becomes a lot easier. First of all, because you're working with real data. But you can go ahead and target who you need to, and you know who you are, and you stay true to that. Otherwise, it's a shotgun approach or a room that someone sleeps in, and there is no real personalization there. Anyone can sleep there. I don't care what the reason is. Just stay one night.
I guess there's a ways to go, and I agree with what you said about even some of the bigger, and not just in our industry, but like in general. Like you see some big companies, the way that they, even certain apps. It's like I have the app on my phone, but then I'm getting an email to download the app, and I'm like, well, I already have it.
But on my phone, right?
And then I guess, yeah, there's that pitfall of repeating information, and then it's not only creepy, but then it's annoying as well. So,
Right.
yeah. Okay, well, yeah, like we actually we gone a bit over our time here, but before we go, I just had one more question to put to you before we close. What would be looking like in the coming months in the future? Like, what are you most looking forward to, and why for our industry?
For the industry, I am looking most forward to what, there's a lot of technology that has been announced. Marriott's doing things, Hilton's doing it, a lot of independents are. I want to see how it gets adopted and how it gets used. So there's a lot of great new innovative players that are out there. All the legacy systems are being disrupted to some degree, whether that's new cloud-based PMSs going in, AI first revenue management solutions like FLYR, cloud, everything cloud-based. There's a lot of new things coming in, and how do we leverage that and use that? That's probably the next 12 to 24 months, is how is that all going to come together, and how do we use it and leverage it? And it goes back to what I said literally 2 minutes ago. As soon as you get the technology that you can start building out, okay, what do we do with the data? How do we make it all work? How do we make it better for customers? And I think that transformation in technology, even Marriott, I'll use them as an example. Their CRS, they're changing out. They're putting in a brand new CRS for the first time since I think 1978 or whenever it was,
Wow.
which they bought that CRS from IHG, who bought that CRS from Sabre. There is literally code in their system from 1962. So, just things like that. This is kind of a new day. All the major brands are looking at new systems and putting new things in, new PMSs. There's some great technology that's out there. Some new players are into the market, like FLYR. I just think that the future is bright. We just have to, as an industry, adopt it, move forward, and do it quicker. Otherwise, it just, someone will come in and do something to us as opposed to us doing it for us ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. There needs to be more of this, I don't know, using it as an enabler for your business, utilizing the power of technology, but then, yeah, aligning it with your business as well, and to move it forward. Totally agree. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for sharing your insights today. I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure that our audience will as well. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Right. Thank you.